Hello everybody, welcome back. We are here to look at another Kindle sample. Someday I'm going to get that Kindle sample list down to 0, but today is not that day. So, the sample that we are looking at today is this one, Kalyna the Soothsayer. Kalyna the Soothsayer, it is by Elijah Kinch Spector. Let's see what we can find out about the cover is interesting actually. I kind of really like the cover. At first it seems just very sort of atmospheric. It's blue and orange, good color combination, never forget that. We got castles and good stuff like that. But if you start looking at the castles that are on the cover here, and you kind of follow them around, and I think it doesn't really indicate which direction. My intuition is to go clockwise, because of course. But you got 6 castles, I took notes. 6 castles, one of them is nice and clean, one is grappled by, it looks like plants. One of them's got flags all fluttering. Another one has a big old bird. One of them's got everything on fire. And then one of them's got a big old dragon or something that looks very dragon-ish kind of curling around behind it. So that's pretty neat. And when you think about, the title, right? Kalyna the Soothsayer, I'm thinking like, okay, these are maybe multiple visions of the future. Maybe they are... is it a multiverse story? Is this like a multiverse fantasy story? Multiple timelines? Different visions that have to be either encouraged or thwarted? I don't know. All right. Well, so why don't we find out? Okay. Stay where you are. I will be right back after I read the sample, okay? Okay. Stick around. Okay. This was neat. I liked this. This is a cool sample. So it starts with an epigraph from Orson Welles, of all people. I haven't seen an Orson Welles epigraph. And in it he says, "But everything must finally fall in war, or wear away into the ultimate and universal ash. The triumphs and the frauds, the treasures and the fakes." And it comes from F for Fake, which I had to look up. F for Fake was a docudrama in the 1970s that Wells did, which was all about like art forgery and creativity and authenticity and exploring sort of the work of an art forger. So that's an interesting one to put at the beginning of this book, because the main character, Kalyna, is the last in a line of soothsayers. This ability to see the future has been passed from parent to child for many, many years. She unfortunately does not have that gift. Her mother is dead. Her father is very ill. Her grandmother is horrible. But Kalyna doesn't have the gift. And yet she's expected to carry on her family tradition, to carry on telling people their fortunes and telling people their futures. I think there's a really neat... Spector did a really nice trick with this to say that the gift that they have will allow them to see the future, but the clearest futures are those of strangers. If you try to see the future of people that you know, the gift kind of won't let you do it, right? So she could, if she had the gift, she wouldn't be able to see her own future. She probably wouldn't be able to see her father's or her grandmother's. But yeah, the narrator, Kalyna, we got a first-person narration, and she is born without that gift. And because she's born without it, her grandmother absolutely despises her and blames her for her mother's death. She is kind of the end of a long line of soothsayers and visionaries, one of a nomadic people who wander about the world under the idea, walls or traps, I think, comes up at one point. And she lives with her domineering grandmother and with her very nice, but again, very ill father, whom she has to support by faking, this gets back to the Orson Welles quote, by faking the ability to see the future. She knows people, she has contacts, she listens carefully, she picks up gossip, and she is able to, by using the information that she has, and almost certainly by using the kind of sort of cold reading techniques that any seer or visionary or fortune teller in our world will use, she's able to at least create the impression that she can see the future well enough that people will walk away happy and that they will pay her, which is lovely. And that seems fine. But again, she is now living a life that she can't really do what she wants. She feels like she's a disappointment to her family. And her father, who does have the gift, prophesies a terrible war coming in a few months. And which is interesting because that prophecy hasn't come up yet. She's talking about they've done visions for people to say that in a year or 5 years or 10 years they'd be married or have children or happy, and now her dad is saying, oh no, almost everyone's going to die in this war. They live in a world called the Tetrarchia, which is 4 kingdoms, which basically decided it was best if they unify into sort of one kind of major nation, and the 4 kings rule. But of course, the 4 nations don't get along very well, so of course there's always tension. Now this vision of a war that Kalyna doesn't know what to do with that information at all, because oh man, it's a lot. It's a lot. There's a lot happening in this sample. I want to tell you that right now. A lot. Another bit, before we move on, there's another bit from the beginning that I liked. It says, some of the people who made my life harder. And this is where the story begins. This is not by made my life harder. This is not Elijah Spector. This is Kalyna. And she very briefly describes the people we're going to meet in the story. Right, Vusala Midokis, my grandmother, the worst person I've ever known. Prince Friedhelm, younger brother to Prince Gerald, seems to be a thoughtless, sybaritic prince, is both more than that and exactly that. So she does have you start to get right away from the story what kind of voice we have for Kalyna the Soothsayer. She is a woman who has to learn how to figure people out very quickly in order to tell them what they want to hear so that she can keep her job as a seer, which she can't actually do. But now she's granted this gift by her dad that, holy cow, there's going to be war, and it is going to be bloody and violent and terrible, and many, many, many people will die. And so while she is trying to figure out what to do with that information, she's picked up by a prince who has heard that she has the gift of prophecy, and he would really like to talk to her. And he says, well, we'll get your dad and your grandma. They'll have a place to stay as well. But the prince would really like to talk to you about your power of prophecy. Uh-oh. That can't go well. So yeah, that's kind of where the sample ends. So the sample contains a lot, honestly. You could spend a lot of time with the Kindle sample by itself. There's a lot of politics going on. As I said, there's these 4 nations which don't necessarily get along with each other, which each have their sort of own special qualities. There is a lot about it all sounds honestly very Eastern European, which I kind of like. A lot of fantasy stories, they kind of default to Western Europe. The names and the locations in this book sound very Eastern European. They have a very sort of Baltic, Baltic, Polish, all these names are leaving my head right now. They shouldn't. I'm smarter than this, but oh well. Eastern Europe, look it up. Wikipedia will tell you. But yeah, it's a lot of prophecy, a lot of politics going on, and a little bit of roguery, a little bit of trickery, a little bit of, how can we pull the wool over the eyes of the powerful? And how is Kalyna going to get out of this one is kind of what I'm left with at the end of this. So I know there's one more book in this series. This is the first of at least 2 so far, I believe. And I like Kalyna. I like seeing her in this difficult place where she can't do what she's supposed to do, but she can't leave the life that she has, right? Because if she leaves, if she says, you know what, I don't have the vision, I can't be a soothsayer, I'm going to go, then she's condemning her father almost certainly to die because he's very ill. And she may not really say it, but she probably won't allow her grandmother to be without their income either. Also probably doesn't want to prove her grandmother right. So yeah, Kalyna's locked into a life that she cannot really fully thrive in. And I think that's a neat idea for any kind of story. And I hope that if we continue to read the book, we see how does Kalyna thrive? How does she find a way to be the person she wants to be, even though she doesn't have the gift that she's supposed to have, right? So ultimately it becomes a story not just about politics and war and soothsaying, but it also becomes a story about how do we as people find our own way, and how do we adapt to the pressures of the people around us who are trying to tell us, oh, you're supposed to be this, or you have to do this thing that maybe you either don't want to do or simply are not capable of doing. So that might be really interesting to explore as well. Would I like to read the rest of this? Yeah, sure. Absolutely. It sounds like fun. I would probably take I would take better notes. I've got lots of notes. I'd probably take better notes on a full read, especially of the politics of it, because it seemed by the time I got to the end of the sample that the politics of the Tetrarchia are kind of important. So I might want to know a bit more about that. But overall, I enjoyed it. If you have read this book and maybe the one that comes after it, I bully for you. And if you've got any thoughts on it, please put them in the comments. I would love to hear from you. As always, I love to hear from people. It's great to get that little email that says, hey, you got a comment. So if you've read it and you want to tell me how off the mark I am, please do. I enjoy that. Or how on the mark I am. I do appreciate positive feedback as well. That's also nice. But in the meantime, thank you very much for sticking around. And I guess I will see you for the next Kindle sample. Won't that be fun? All right. So see you next time. Stay well.